Hello and welcome to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Manny Maradiege, here today on Wednesday, halfway through the week already, January 8th, getting closer and closer to the start of the wild card rounds. A weekend full of football, honestly, with the college football playoffs getting started tomorrow already. So we're going to have a bunch of football to get to and a lot of topics on today's show to get to surrounding the NFL as well. Starting off with keeping track of all the coaching interviews and who's going where, who's talking with who. We're going to go through all of that in the first segment and just my thoughts on it, as well as giving a mini prediction on who I kind of want to see end up where. So that'll be something we talk about, as well as, speaking about coaching, the Dallas Cowboys denying the Chicago Bears' request to speak with Mike McCarthy. What was that about? Why is Jerry Jones, saying something and then saying the complete opposite thing? We're going to get to that as well, along with my final award predictions. Now that the regular season's over with, we're going to get to that, and the latest update on Jalen Hurts. So all of that is being brought to you on today's show. And before we get to any of those topics, I'd like to remind you guys, as I always do, if you guys have any questions, comments, or any opinions you'd like to share about anything really surrounding the NFL, please don't hesitate to do so. Your input and insight into anything is always welcome, and it always allows us to get a different perspective on something and maybe take the conversation in a different direction with your guys' help. So now, if you want to make it absolutely sure that your message stands out and it gets featured on the show, there's an easy way to do that now, just by using the new Super Chat feature. Just click the $ at the bottom of the chat box to send in your Super Chat, and this way, your message is guaranteed to be featured on the show because I'll be able to see it, read it out loud, and get a gauge at what you guys are thinking of during any of these topics on today's show. So again, let us know what you're thinking. Hit the Super Chat button. Let's keep this show as exciting and as interactive as possible. I always like hearing what you guys have to say. Just click the $ and get involved with the show. But with that now out of the way, like I mentioned, we're going to start off by talking about the coaching, carousel that we have going on, who's talking with who's getting interviewed where, all those sort of things. It's pretty interesting to kind of get an initial gauge at what's going on in terms of what direction these teams are going with, right? And the main ones are the Jets, the Bears, the Jaguars, and the Patriots. The Raiders haven't really requested interviews with anybody yet. They're still so new to the whole, playing field, right? Because they just fired Antonio Pierce. So we're not going to get to them yet, but really the Jets, the Bears, the Jaguars, the Saints is also the other one, and the New England Patriots are all already getting the process going, obviously. So yesterday was kind of like a step one to kind of know who has head coaching vacancies or just openings really on their roster. And now it's kind of step two, progressing through it and getting to know who is, interviewing at what spots. And starting off with the Jets, they have the most interviews lined up already, and they have already a couple of them done. They have said to be interviewing with 14 candidates for their head coaching position, definitely being thorough about it, right? Because this year really turned out the worst possible way. So the Jets are interviewing 14 possible candidates. Among them are the obvious ones like Aaron Glenn, Brian Flores, Mike Vrabel. They already interviewed Ron Rivera. Joe Brady's another one just within the division. Arthur Smith for the Pittsburgh Steelers is another one, and Bobby Slowick and all those guys as well. They already interviewed with Rex Ryan as well, but there are some surprising ones like Matt Nagy, like Josh McCown, former quarterback, former enough, recently enough that I remember when he was actually playing as a player. He's currently the Vikings quarterback coach as of right now, but he has gotten an interview with them for their head coaching position. Van Joseph is another one with the job he's done with the Denver Broncos. It was funny because we talked about it yesterday, how he should be getting some looks as well, and now it looks like the Jets are taking that step. And Brian Grease, the 49ers quarterback coach, is another one, as well as Darren Rizzi, the Saints interim head coach as of right now after they fired Darren Allen, or Dennis Allen, excuse me. He's getting a real opportunity here to try and be a head coach with the Jets. At least he's getting an interview. So those are basically all the coaches that the Jets are interviewing. And before I get into who I'd want, them to see higher, elsewhere we got the Chicago Bears. They're interviewing just as many people, about 13 head coaching candidates that they are scheduled to talk to. Some that are the same, like Aaron Glenn, Mike Vrabel, Brian Flores, and Arthur Smith. But where it's different from the New York Jets is the Bears are also set to interview with Pete Carroll. I believe that's going to be tomorrow. Ben Johnson is also another one. Thomas Brown, who's the interim head coach right now. Mike Kafka for the New York Giants. He is their offensive coordinator right now. He's gotten a head coaching interview with them. Drew Petzing, the offensive coordinator for the Cardinals, is also getting a shout here. Todd Monken, with the job he's done in Baltimore, he's got a head coaching interview with them as well. And Anthony Weaver, the Dolphins defensive coordinator, is also getting an opportunity to kind of at least get his name out there with this sort of interview. So that's great to see as well. Then elsewhere, we got the Jaguars with about half of the candidates that the Bears and Jets do. They're interviewing 8 guys, being Aaron Glenn, Ben Johnson, Joe Brady, Todd Monken, Robert Saleh is a new one. They are interviewing the former Jets head coach, former 49ers defensive coordinator. He's getting another opportunity here. Kellen Moore is another one. I thought he'd be getting more looks, or at least being talked about a little bit more, but apparently not to the Bears or the Jets. But at least he has an opportunity here with the Jaguars. Then staying in Florida is Liam Cohen, currently the offensive coordinator for the Buccaneers. He's getting a head coaching interview with the Jaguars, and the way he has done his job, the way the Bucs look this year, especially on offense with Baker Mayfield, I think that's well deserved. And Patrick Graham, the defensive coordinator for the Raiders, is getting an opportunity here as well. Then the Saints, about the same amount of guys, the typical names other than, it's all basically the same. Their list is a little bit shorter. Aaron Glenn, Mike Vrabel, Joe Brady, Mike Kafka, Anthony Weaver, Kellen Moore. So they also have David Shaw. David Shaw is the Broncos senior personnel executive, and he's getting another opportunity here to potentially be the head coach of the Saints. They're giving him a chance to interview for the spot, so that's good to see. I don't really know too much about him, but at least he's getting the opportunity. Then the Patriots are keeping it very close. The Patriots don't really have a wide range of guys that maybe could be their head coach, so you get a better understanding of who it could be. Mike Vrabel, Ben Johnson, Byron Leftwich is a new one, the former Buccaneers offensive coordinator back when they won the Super Bowl with Tom Brady still there. And Pep Hamilton, the former Chargers and Houston quarterback coach. Currently, he's getting an opportunity with the Patriots as of right now. So we rattled off a lot of names, a lot of the similar ones, because I think in a way they're the most deserving of it, you could say. So with that out of the way now, there's a lot of names to get to, but who is going to end up who, right? I think for the time being, based on all the information that we have, looking at all these teams and, how some of them have a wider range of potential candidates, I think for the most part, I have my eye on a couple ones that I think would be ideal fits. Starting off with the Patriots, we sort of talked about it before with Gerard Mayo being fired and there being a lot of attention on Mike Vrabel. I think this one makes too much sense not to happen. I know Mike Vrabel would probably get a lot of these jobs. He's very qualified to be the head coach anywhere, but I think the familiarity there in New England, Robert Kraft, the former player there, I think that one is just like screaming that it's just like a perfect match there for Vrabel to kind of bring them back to what they want to be, obviously in their glory days, the franchise sort of days, where the dynasty sort of days, I should have said. who better to do it than a guy that actually played there? So that one seems too obvious not to happen. Another obvious one, I think, is Aaron Glenn. Aaron Glenn was a former defensive back in the NFL, and he was actually a defensive backs coach there with the New Orleans Saints, and he seems pretty well revered there. I heard Drew Brees talk about him and how he views him as the ideal candidate. I'm pretty sure he's already had an interview there as well. So, he was coaching there before Dan Campbell brought him over to Detroit, So with that connection back to New Orleans, and I feel like when you have a connection like that, it always serves you a little bit better to be given a little bit more time when maybe things aren't going to go well the first year, to know and you have that trust and connection, that prior relationship with the organization. I think that would bode well for him. So Aaron Glenn, I can see him landing with the Saints. And for the Jaguars, another one that didn't really have too many candidates thus far, I could see them going with someone like, I kind of like Joe Brady there. I need somebody that's very offensive minded with them, because obviously they have Trevor Lawrence and the talent on offense. Brian Thomas Jr. looks fantastic. So I really like Joe Brady. I like the job he's done with the Buffalo Bills, and really Josh Allen. I'm surprised no one's really talking about him more, right, as much as like Ben Johnson or Aaron Glenn or things like that. So I would love to see Joe Brady there and really take on that challenge in Jacksonville, where you're in a division that's really not like a powerhouse really outside of the Texans, and they're not completely overtaking everybody. So he has an opportunity there to really take over as much of that division and really be close to the Houston Texans, because the Colts aren't really looking great right now. The Titans are still trying to reset everything. So I think that would be a great opportunity for everybody. They have a bunch of cap space. They have a new stadium being built and everything like that. It could be the beginning of something really, really exciting. So I think Joe Brady would be a great candidate there. And for the Chicago Bears, I think Ben Johnson makes a lot of sense to take on that challenge, have a rookie quarterback from this year and really make him your franchise guy. I think that's something that Ben Johnson would really excel with. The kind of playmakers they have, the defense that they already have is really good, and really they just got to do the dirty work, right? The offensive linemen get a little bit more help on the defensive line as well. But outside of that, it's hard to really say that you need much else, right? They got everything else, like the flashy pieces, the wide receiver, the running back, the quarterback, obviously. But now they need a new head coach, a guy that's better equipped, I guess you could say, to handle a rookie quarterback like Caleb Williams. And you still need that offensive line, which is going to be massive. But I think Ben Johnson would really excel at that. I heard Caleb Williams talk about it, and how, in his words, I'm pretty sure he said he was fascinated and really interested with how Ben Johnson called that game against the Vikings. So I would like to see Ben Johnson end up there. He's familiar with it in the division as well. I think that would be a good fit. And then for the Jets, just off the top of my head, out of all these names, right, Rex Ryan really wants to be the coach there, but at the beginning of this, I wasn't really pushing for Rex Ryan. So I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being Rex, because everywhere you look, it's always a quote about him wanting to be the head coach again. But I don't know, maybe someone like Brian Flores. I think Brian Flores could do very well there. He's already been in that division, obviously, with the Patriots and being the head coach of the Dolphins, and he didn't do that bad. I know there were some question marks about the relationship with him and Tua Tagovailoa, but it did produce something. He was pretty successful there, had a good defense, and the Jets have a good defense as well. So at least you would hope to get that. And on the offensive side of the ball, there's a lot to be done, obviously. How do you use Breece Hall? How do you get the best out of Garrett Wilson? Is that offensive line finished, or you still need to add a lot to it? I think bringing in a guy like Brian Flores could be exciting for them. And I don't know. I mean, they have a lot of guys to get through, so we'll see. But I mean, Brian Flores or like Ron Rivera wouldn't surprise me either. Pete Carroll could be one, but he's not even on their list of potential interviews. So I think really Brian Flores is the one that sits the best with me thus far. But we're still in the early stages, so for the time being, we're just going to leave it at that, and we're going to move on to another segment we have coming up after the break. Speaking about head coaches, one head coach that wasn't given the opportunity elsewhere was Mike McCarthy because the Cowboys wouldn't allow it. We're going to talk more about that, why that happened, a potential explanation for it, and what the future holds for the Cowboys and Mike McCarthy. We'll discuss that when we return after this.